Hello there! Welcome to the ReZero podcast. I'm your host, Wolf. You may know me as the voice actor for Subaru in our Arc 5 readings of the ReZero web novel. Today, we will be discussing and analysing Phase 4 of Arc 7 from the ReZero web novel. Me and my wonderful co-host will be heading straight into this. But first, introduce yourselves, gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gold. I voice Roswell, Felix, and Sirius in our reads, and I'm dying to talk about this one.
Yeah, I'll try and keep my intro under 10 seconds. I'm Connor, voice of Julius and Kiritaka, and one of the hosts for this podcast.
But damn, he did it.
That was under 10 seconds.
Under 10 seconds.
That was
Wolf can have
impressive.
the 11th one.
How will I ever hit ad revenue?
Oh no.
Oh my god.
To be fair, it is the only ad revenue that we make off this channel now. Which is
thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your precious watch time is greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
As are your comments. We read them all like multiple times.
We read them all
every
religiously.
week.
Oh yeah, 100%. Great to hear from you guys, and I'm glad you guys are liking this, even though we're a bit behind compared to where
everyone else it probably is. But the discussion of topic today, which I've already said, is Phase 4 of Arc 7, which is going to be a very interesting episode today. We'll be having simultaneously a lot to talk about, but also not too much, in the sense of these are this phase is 15 chapters long, and these are
15 long chapters.
Chapters. Like, oh my god, they are so long. So
and we do love to talk and blabber on about a lot of stuff, but it's long, and a lot of the stuff don't need to be talked about, let's say.
Yeah.
And it tends to repeat, as this story wants to do when it gets into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an extra special repetition.
It's
So our summaries are going to be less this time. We're kind of just going to hit the major scenes and the events as they go on, talk about major points for the characters, rather than kind of following through with a summarized format.
Yes, and for those who come here for those summaries, we'll be talking generally about the broad strokes of things. But yeah, if you want a more detailed summary, there are great YouTube videos out there, no doubt. They'll be able to do it more so than that. But this is a podcast that talks more about sometimes the meta text of everything, or the narrative that is being told, and we like to just talk about theories and all that stuff. That is what this sort of format's for. So we'll be leaning heavily into that more so than the summary part of it, so apologize in advance.
So just right off the bat then, you two, initial impressions of this phase, if you couldn't have guessed or didn't know, stuff was getting pretty controversial when these chapters were coming out. Like, this was received in kind of two different directions by a lot of the fans at the time.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, honestly. I can imagine it being divisive. I think one benefit me and Gold have over a lot of you guys at the time is we are not reading this week by week. We are binge reading it in like a bulk. And I think 100%. That definitely changes our impression to yours. So it's going to be interesting to hear your opinions, Connor.
And not only that, there's the fact that we know that there's more past this. So when you're probably reading this initially, you're like, where is this going, right? Which becomes the issue with reading, say, a book page by page, chapter by chapter, is you don't really get the payoff of a more sort of, broad stroke of like a book or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't envy that situation. I, as somebody who read a lot of manga weekly, have felt that feeling many a time. And right now, I wouldn't blame you if you took a break from ReZero and just waited for a lot of it to come out to get back on it, because you're right. It's like, who are these people? Like, are we starting to really care about these guys? Like, that's in this place, everything that's been built up before feels so new, but also uncertain. It's like, how long are we going to be in here, right? where you feel the security of the rest of the story sort of behind this arc, where it's like all new things that you can't rely on as a reader to feel comforted by, or the familiarity to endear you with.
It's overall very interesting. My overall opinion on this phase so far is it has simultaneously some of my favourite moments in the arc so far and some of my least favourite. Not least favourite in the sense of like, oh, worst thing ever written. More just, you know, I feel there's a point where I think Taboo maybe goes on just a little bit too long in the early parts of this phase. There's just a bit too much fluff. And that's okay. That's not the end of the world for me.
It's why he has an editor.
It's why, yes, it's why he has an editor. It's why the light novel exists. For, well, many of the reasons why the light novel exists. But when it comes to the high points of this phase, oh my god, I have so much to talk about today. And specifically, that is why we cannot summarize as much as we normally do today. Because we have loads of theories and character stuff to talk about. It's crazy.
When Wolf got to the, we'll call it the peak of this phase, he was just spamming me with messages about it, freaking out, not knowing what to do or what was going on, and I was sitting there in an airport with just this giant grin on my face.
It's crazy.
There's a lot to talk about, and it is the type of high action sort of impact stuff that you like, and a lot of it sometimes slow, right? Because as I said before, you know, this is a reading format, right? You're reading the repeats, you're reading the inner thoughts and the slight subtle, you know, situations, you know, the shift in personalities, the shift in, you know, reactions, that type of thing. And yeah, I think like this arc really, in my opinion, of the arc is good, and of course sets up a whole lot. It has a sort of high impact, punchy stuff that you like from ReZero, but it plays to a lot of the weaknesses of the arc in terms of like trying to do small moments that aren't so emotionally impactful. You know, trying to be very detail oriented, in moments that we can't really feel much to, or, you know, playing with the structure. I mean, towards the end, it gets creative with it enough that you kind of start to like it again. But throughout most of this arc, you are kind of just lost in a daze almost, which I think was his intention. But I think it also is a bit, you know, I would say meandering at times.
I can understand that, especially again, like in the sense of again with Connor reading it week by week and us binging it. We can, I guess it's kind of that thing of it's a little less frustrating because it's like an overall arching tone for this phase. But if you're reading, if I was reading this week by week, I would probably be getting pretty frustrated. I'd say, at least in the early chapters here.
Mm-hmm. So, in hindsight, I don't think this phase is as bad as I really thought it was when I was going through it at the time for the issues that we've mentioned. It does have some really great and really powerful moments, and it starts the beginning of something that is one of my favorite things that Arc 7 really does. So, I am grateful for it in hindsight. There's just a lot of feature on characters who, at this point, people are still relatively unfamiliar with. Even like Subaru, to an extent, is no longer the Subaru that we know, or even the Natsumi that we just got familiar with. Yeah. We have Natsuki Schwartz, or however that chapter title phrases it.
It's Natsuki Shubawu.
That's right. Yeah. So that's just it's a new character, and the only other person who's really familiar to us at this point is Al, who's super mysterious, or Abel, who is really closed off still.
I would say Abel was the most consistent character throughout this phase. He's the kind of like anchor for this phase.
Yeah,
all the chaos that happens.
Obviously, personality-wise, he's definitely the most, you know, with it. Of course, I would say Terada, she's dependable and stuff like that, but you know, she's not really as interesting as Abel, obviously. So
yeah.
but Abel's definitely the guiding post of this sort of arc in terms of your viewpoint. Strength not in power, but in conviction and kind of leading you by the hair, even though everything's going really haywire in this arc.
So I guess that's a good lead in though for our initial point of discussion here is that Subaru as well as Medium and Al have all been regressed to a 9 to 12-year-old child form.
Now, this is something I was talking a bit before the podcast. There was something I was really worried about when I saw that this was happening, and that was, if they have been regressed, does that mean Subaru has his gait back because it's technically an organ? But thank God, I'm very happy with this decision. Subaru still has his scars. Subaru's gait is still broken. Al still does not have his arm. Just because they've regressed to a childlike body does not mean that they've reverted all of the things their body has experienced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they've shrunk down, not gone back in time.
And to note, this sort of infantilization technique that's been put on them, this little hex that this crappy old man has done to them, is honestly it's an attack in a way that we've not seen before, right? Because it has nothing to do with time manipulation necessarily. It's literally just body shaping.
Yes.
Or it's not soul. It's not like destroying your odd or anything like that. It's shaping who you are, physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, well, actually, yeah, that's a good point. It's shaping your, maybe it's your odd because it's you still have the injuries, so it's interesting. I think
it's that kind of thing of I think they've made a point of this before, where the body is the container for the odd, but the odd can in ways manipulate the body when it's manipulated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably what's happening here. But yeah, it is crazy. So they kind of get to this point, and one of the things that happens initially when they're first infantilized is they you see Al, and Al still has this sort of moment where he's my arm's still missing, and he makes the point that he has this very real still emotional scar of his face and his arm still, and he's not gonna show his face even though he's young, which I think that's interesting. It makes you wonder. It kind of confirms a bit of suspicion, but it also kind of tapes down some of the theories that people have about Al so far, and it makes me feel he is just traumatized, or he, obviously there's reasons why he doesn't want people to see his face, but if even as a child he's no, I have to keep it wrapped up, it makes sense because it's not like anybody's going to remember who he is as a child. So yeah, it is a psychological scar as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a deep traumatic psychological issue, rather than I think a big, oh my god, secret, now we see his face, we know who he is. This is about insecurity and about trying to protect yourself from others seeing your emotions, which I think makes a lot more sense when we get a bit of context to how he might feel later. Interestingly enough, we now also know that their clothes and weapons haven't shrunk down with them either. So the fighting power of the party has significantly decreased, and Abel is basically just plainly says, we're in terrible danger, because...
Seem to affect Medium that much, honestly. Emotionally or physically. She's just as capable as she always has.
But another funny thing to note, which I found kind of curious, is Subaru isn't really panicking too hard at this point, because he's just I've been through so much worse, this is fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not meant violence or anything like that. He's just he's chilling. He's not, nobody's dead.
Yeah.
We haven't been hurt. That's fine.
It could and will be worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's really funny too, because I think it puts into perspective how horrible the experiences Subaru has had, that this doesn't faze him. Because if this was any normal person, and had this experience happen to them, I feel like there'd be a couple minor mental breakdowns upon immediate reaction to this happening.
Yeah, and well, Abel kind of picks up on this, and we'll get to this, later. It's like Abel's starting to sense that something's up with Subaru because there's really no other logical explanation, and we'll get to like a very definitive punctuation where they're like, "Who are you?" Right later in this arc.
Yeah, that's kind of a running theme for the whole phase is just Abel getting more suspicious of Subaru the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're with who? And we'll get that later. But like the idea is that like, yeah, there's a major suspicion. You're Abel's like, you guys should be way more worried about this.
Yeah.
Medium, of course, is herself. She's happy-go-lucky, and I think Al is the one who's freaking out the most about the situation initially. But yeah, they're kind of at a loss, and yeah, weirdly enough, only he and Terada are the ones who aren't affected.
Yeah, the group kind of speculates about what goes on. Subaru initially thinks, "Oh God, it was Yorna that did this," and then Abel was like, "Nope, that does not make sense for a character. This was definitely that old vicious man, Obart."
Which he's right. Yeah.
He's right. Yeah.
And we'll get to later that this is definitely not Yorna's character to do.
Yeah, at all. And it's rather interesting because Abel's just like, "Oh yeah, Obart, he's the head of the Shinobi tribe, who are like masters of very peculiar and powerful techniques." So this, not only Obart but also his tribe seem to be a pretty scary threat if they could do stuff like turn you into a child.
That being said, I wonder what the heck are they? This is magic in a scale that we haven't seen before. Do they all have these ninjutsus and stuff like that? I mean, I assume. I mean, when a Japanese writer gets the chance to write about ninjas being cool, they will take that to the logical extreme. So is there other ninjutsus and stuff?
That my running
as a minor point here for that though, this is not the first time that Shinobi or ninjutsu have been introduced into the world of ReZero. They are first brought up in the Sloth If story.
Talk about that. I don't really...
It's just as there's a character in that who uses them. I plan on us doing that story relatively soon.
Oh, definitely.
So I don't want to go over it too much, just that the introduction of Shinobi in Wallachia was more of an interesting twist to me because they were established as part of Kararagi before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get this in the side story that we just covered, more about ninjas showing up. So
yeah.
Probably working with or from the same place as Obart.
Yeah, seems like, right?
Which is kind of...
So Al, actually, it's interesting. Al probably is like the one who also knows about this as well as Abel. It's like all these ninjas,
Yeah. And it's kind of curious too, because it's this kind of thing of where Subaru's like, ninjas? Ninjutsu? This sort of stuff? And Abel looks at him like he's some fucking weirdo and is like, what is that? And
Subaru says the word ninja, right?
Yeah.
Rather than Shinobi?
Yeah, he says the word ninja rather than Shinobi.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. And he specifically mentions that... so my understanding of what a fictional ninja or ninjutsu would be is probably not accurate to what a shinobi exactly is in this world. But yeah, on the topic of shinobi stuff, I had a couple running theories about how their techniques might work. So, for like a minute or two. So if you guys be curious to listen, I'm going to spit some stuff out. So my two big things with how these weird techniques could possibly work was that we already see a technique outside of directly elemental magic in the verse, which is the flow technique, right? The ability to put mana in your body and enhance its strength and do some incredibly amazing physical feats. One of my theories was perhaps it's almost like an extension or a deeper like training or a further extension of what the flow technique is, like going that direction in magic instead of focusing on the elemental side. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It's all manipulating mana, and that's
Yeah.
effectively what's happening here because it's coming from the Ode and working around with that stuff. Like Scarf Donna is able to create the effect of a spell by burning off an Ode instead. I don't see why this necessarily has to be that different.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the kind of idea, at least, that and until that's disproven, that's what I'm going to run with.
'Cause honestly, within this phase, the Shinobi technique's existence don't really seem more out of place than the other crazy technique that comes up in this phase.
Yes. But yeah, everyone's kind of like, whoa, what the hell? And then, knock, knock at the door. Who is it? It's Tanza, the messenger we met in the other phase of Yorna. She's like, Yorna-sama is going to respond to your message. Please come at this time. And then leaves. We're like, oh yeah, strategy meeting. Everyone discusses what they're going to do. Subaru kind of considers dressing as Lolly Natsumi to not confuse Yorna.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about the detail. And
It's
it
so funny.
makes sense when you really think about it. It's like, what? You have to explain that?
Yeah. It's kind of that thing of like, how do we explain this dissonance right now? Fucking... And this is something I did not expect in the story to happen at all at this point. They're having this discussion, and then Obart appears. The guy that did this to them
He's
appears.
been here the whole time.
He's been there the whole time. He's like,
I've been here the whole time.
do you want tea?
Yeah, he's pretty much, yeah. He like this is one of the terrifying moments. I mean, we'll get to how terrifying it is later, but like in retrospect, this is like a very creepy thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when I went into this arc, I initially inspected Obart to be sort of like an annoying sort of geezer who plays, you know, pranks on people. And I think that's one of the interesting parts about this is that you kind of go in expecting one thing because of how kind of, I would say, jovial-esque about the way that things have been going. I mean, it's been deep emotionally, right, with all the introspective stuff. But like, you aren't expecting what happens in this arc, you know, to happen with all these characters around you that, you know, you feel kind of safe with. You're like, you know, Al's safe. You know, they're all children, right? Like, what's the worst thing that's they're, you know, we're gonna do with, you know, children, right? Yeah.
Like this series has ever shied away from hurting kids before.
True. But what I mean is that, like, if somebody meaningfully afflicts you with being a child and then wants to, you know, kill you, then that's another level of like
spooky,
you know, weirdness. Yeah.
It's
well, he says that the regression technique that he uses here is meant to be like an interrogation form.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That
so
he basically just does it to make it easier to torture them.
Yeah, he does it to make it less easy for them to escape, more easy to not only torture them physically, but also because they're in a lesser mental state, they may reveal information more freely if used to.
I think it's one thing that we've kind of picked up on as well is that Vlachia is a very, you know, there's a very cruel underlying sense of like, you know, strength at all forms, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's another representation of it, that this is one of the generals, right?
And not only one of the generals, one of the apex of the generals. The first.
Yeah, one of the generals is what I meant to say. You
Yeah.
know? And yeah, I think that's true. And it makes you wonder a bit about the Shinobi's sort of backstory, because a lot of times Shinobis in anime have very, you know, strict, cruel training regimens and all stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we get,
and only one of you gets to survive.
Yeah.
exactly, 100%. And you know, it's I'll slaughter my entire clan sort of idea. And I think I wouldn't be surprised in ReZero, because of the way that this is showing up, where we're getting all these characters, that we get more about why he's the way that he is. I'm not saying a name chapter, well, maybe later, but like, you know, I think we'll definitely get more.
As we discuss more and more, I have a lot to say about Obart as a character. not just in terms of his powers and like how strong he is, but also like who he is, because he's a character I don't think we've really seen truly before in the story, which is kind of interesting in terms of antagonist, I find, at least. But we're kind of at that point where I at this point when I was reading, I still couldn't believe Obart was here. So when my jaw was dropped, and then Obart calms the room down. I was like, oh no, it's fine, guys. I'm just here for tea. And then he's like, yo, Subaru, you're pretty good with that disguise stuff. Want to become like a lecturer at the Shinobi village?
Yeah, you want to come and give a tips on doing that?
Yeah, and then we're like, oh, it's all great, it's all good. Fucking, and then he turns the room cold as ice and says, I can't trust anyone I haven't tortured. Excuse me? What? And then we're like, whoa, so how do we get past this point, gentlemen? Subaru and Abel have the perfect plan. They're going to reveal Abel's identity to my boy Obart, and they're going to, it's foolproof, right? Like, he's going to realize, oh, this is the real emperor, he's going to switch sides, and then they have the strongest divine generals.
These guys are, kneeling to the emperor.
I mean, he came in with the emperor, with Vincent. That's where they found him with the city. It makes sense to tell him. It's not a bad plan, even though it doesn't work out.
Oh, it's not at all.
The only reason that doesn't work out is because of his insanity. Yeah, really. Yeah.
So we learn so many things all at once, which, again, as reading this, it's crazy. So, Obart's just like, oh, that's really funny. Do you know what's really cool about the position we're in right now? I've always wanted to die a glorious death as an old man by killing the emperor of this country and becoming infamous.
Strength rules all in Wallachia.
Yeah. Fucking Al can't use his power. Al can't use his authority anymore after his regression for whatever reason. And
that's a point that even Obart picks up on. Is like, whatever crazy thing you were doing to stop me in the palace is clearly not working right now, is it, huh?
And he's delighted by that, from what I understand as well.
Which is crazy, by the way.
Oh, he's fucking crazy. He kills Al and Tarita with a shuriken. And the way it's described, it's just a single blow, and they're just dead. They're gone.
Yeah, 100%. And this is an archetype that you see sometimes in which there's this old warrior skilled behind his years who longs and craves for the days in which he can finally live up to the glory that he was promised at his young age, And I think this is that sort of taking the logical stream. Like, he's foregoing every single moral that he can think of, logic even, because he has this sort of selfish ambition that still is just the barest embers within him. And it requires him, to do such cruel things with such casual ease that is almost unnerving. And I think that's the type of fright that you don't see, because it's not insanity, right? It is just, he doesn't care anymore. Yeah.
You have to be awfully evil to be in Wallachia and have the nickname of Vicious.
Yeah. I think, as a general thing on Obart's character, as you learn throughout this phase, is Obart isn't insane. This is what makes Obart more fucked up. Obart knows how bad the things he's doing are, and he doesn't care. Like, he is fine with breaking these taboos, these societal taboos, because he wants to achieve something.
I did say insane earlier. Let me amend my statement. I'll say just an awful sort of tired old man. I guess that's the archetype, right? Where it's like, this guy honed his skill through fighting and battle for so long that he's now seeing he's getting too old, he's doing whatever, and he's like, I will, for the last part of my life, do the grandest thing that I can just so that I can feel a bit better before I die,
Yeah. I mean, we learn later on in this phase that he's been through rigorous training techniques. He's eaten the worst food possible. Like, he's lived a life of seemingly pain and not much luxury and not much emotional fulfillment. And it's kind of chiseled him into a a dagger of a person is my way to describe him. Someone that's always ready to stab the person next to him in the back. In a very similar vein to Todd, who we've already met. But with...
I wonder if this is becoming a trend in Valachians.
Yeah. It's known as the land of the wolves, right? Like, people always in like a dog-eat-dog world. Like, everyone is trying to climb on top of each other. Everyone's trying to use each other. Everyone is trying to find a way to get the upper hand. It's survival, and not really much time for ideals.
I want to
personal ambitions.
I want to bookmark this point for a bit later in our discussion today, just for like what you've said here, because I do want to come back to it in a bit. Yes.
But yeah. Subaru dies trying to protect Abel. A really interesting character moment, by the way. I understand Subaru's willingness to protect those around him, but he makes a very... Like, he's always made a point in his brain of, I do not like this guy, but he always goes out of his way to try and protect him.
Yeah, he says the same thing about Julius.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
But it's a bit... But he says that openly with his mouth to Julius. He doesn't really...
It's a bit more... Yeah, it's a bit more sincerely, like, dubious of his relationship with him so far, because everything that Abel has put him through has been against his ideals and is actually something that he has to war with. In terms of, like, Julius, which is that he had an inferiority complex and it was all delusion, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's also... Abel has also been right most of the time.
Yeah, he's right, but what I mean is that, you know, in the way that Vincent's right, there really is a bit of conflict there, you know?
It's that kind of thing. Vincent is a character that a lot of the time is logically right. But in Subaru's mind, I think a lot of times emotionally or morally wrong, if that makes sense. It's not even like what he's saying, it's how he's saying it a lot of the time. That's pissing off.
Fair. But, like, on that concept of morals, we're just now talking on just, like, how morally bankrupt people like Obart and Todd are. And if someone who is, like, only enough to make Subaru have serious arguments and contemplations with is in charge of the whole place, I mean, compared to everyone else, he's got to seem like nice. Just this genuine saint of a person.
Yeah. Which I think is a purposeful decision, to my understanding. But this is where we start this is where we start to have a little sprint in the arc, because Subaru's return point is when Obart shows up and offers everyone tea.
It's his most recent return point yet.
Yeah. And you know what? This thing that we're going to talk about with Return by Death is honestly quite intriguing. I wonder... We don't know how the return points have been set so far. If it's conscious or not. If it's, you know, a game being played by Satella.
Autosave, you know.
Yeah, autosave. But it could be a manual save that Satella is like, this seems good. Or I'm teaching you a lesson by putting it here, right?
Yeah.
And there's also the point that's like, is it that it's automatic, as you said, like an autosave function that is malfunctioning now? That'd be interesting, and I wonder why, right? Subaru himself is like, what's wrong?
My running theory is it's not, because at least from my understanding, it seems that Satella isn't too much in direct control of it. It's the Witch of Envy's personality that's in control of this authority side. And it seems to me...
Apologies, I mean the Witch of Envy, yeah.
It seems to me it's a manual save on her part, because as we learn in Arc 4, this is for Subaru's preservation, for no one else's. So she's deemed this point to be the most optimal point for Subaru to secure his future safety. Like, because from that perspective of like, oh, go back to this point and just take this conversation in literally the opposite direction and you'll be fine. Which is what happens here, right? So we learn Subaru starts to panic. He realizes, I cannot underestimate this man ever again. And he never does in this phase, by the way, is a thing I'll make a point of. Subaru learns his lesson here. He never underestimates Obart again.
Yeah, this Subaru seems pretty quick on his feet right now, huh?
Yeah. He's, for a kid, and even someone that's kind of like mentally de-aging, he's very quick on his feet. And Abel understands kind of what Subaru's trying to do with this conversation. And so Abel buys time while Obart pokes at them and Subaru tries to get through this conversation without everyone dying.
He pulls it off pretty well. I think it's
Yeah.
really, really telling how trusting Abel is in Subaru at this point, though.
Yes. Abel
He's a man with
sees
only good
something.
timing.
Yeah, it's the same with Ram. Yes, of the awfully good timing, because we see this from multiple points throughout this phase where he will like criticize Subaru for something, and then when he does something different in the next loop, he'll praise Subaru for doing the right decision, and his opinion of him like goes up.
Yeah, because like every character in
Yes.
like Todd, he sees the best version of Subaru, and so
Not
he
the
can
Subaru that's
tell
failed. Yeah.
when Subaru is on, like, it's kind of like a hint for, oh, we're on the correct route now.
Yeah. Yeah, like this, he picked the right dialogue options in our text adventure game, you know?
The taboo is going to come back up soon, but it makes me think about the fact that, for people that could figure this out somehow, even around the taboo, once they figure it out, it'll be so easy for that person to trust Subaru. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as
It's like
somebody who
Roswell.
isn't, yeah, just like Roswell, as soon as somebody like Roswell finds out exactly what his power entails, then 100% he's going to be sticking by Subaru because there's no reason to do otherwise, right? You're hoping that this is the right one, because if it's the right one, then everybody's getting what they want. Yeah, as long as he's on your side, obviously.
Yeah. And
that's his only death to Obart in this room, right?
Yeah. Yes. Because they find the solution immediately. So Abel makes a kind of good guess where he's like, yo, your ambition is to be the strongest of all the generals, the first seat. And Subaru is like, you're on the right line, but not on the right point. And he's just straight up, he gambles in this conversation. Like, even in narration, he's kind of feeling like that. And it's very interesting. Subaru is being way more decisive in his childlike form than he normally is. And it's, in a sense, it's meaning that he makes more mistakes, but it's also meaning that he's making the correct decisions more on the first route, if that makes sense.
He doesn't get in his own way nearly as much.
Yeah, well,
he's not his own
evident.
worst enemy here. It's actual other people's obstacles that are the problem.
I think the point is that as a child, he is more emotionally confident.
Yeah.
In this arc, we see him express himself so openly that it's like reflex, right? He's acting on
Yes.
instinct. And I think that's the key point of this.
Well, if we
As
go
a child,
back to like the memory of him from Arc 4, he was just the gifted kid who was naturally good at everything.
And this is
right.
one of the main points I want to talk about this episode. We are getting to see this side of Subaru, the gifted kid, the one who's quick on his feet, the one who's confident, the one who has ability. And the issue, I think this is highlighting this for me, and what Tapei is trying to say, is that never went away for Subaru.
Exactly.
Subaru was the one who was in way of that.
Because we're seeing with people like Medium that this isn't necessarily a mental de-aging in the sense that it reverts you back to how you were as a child.
Yes.
This is Subaru instinctively taking up those characteristics that haven't been resolved inside of them.
And it's showing a side to Subaru's character that we haven't really seen before. And it makes me very happy because it feels like we're getting to the through line of Subaru realizing his true potential, which I think is going to be the overarching arc of this arc and the next arc, right?
Yeah, in a full extent, and as well as I think this is a very cathartic thing to do in your real life, in a sense. And I know you can't become an actual child, but I mean, reflect on your origins and how you've kind of developed your personality for what reason and through what events. And I think Subaru has been avoiding that. I mean, he was physically confronted it during the trial, but there's still those little bit of seeds in him that he hasn't come to a conclusion of, because he came to the conclusion of his parents, right, and all this stuff, and leaving them, and what it means to try his best in the new world. But he hasn't come to a conclusion of what made him fail in the first place. Like, he hasn't come and overcame those burdens of, understanding, like, healing that sort of wound that's been caused as he's been through those scenarios as a child. Like, those are still very much there.
I would argue this to an extent further. I think this is genuinely an issue of Subaru's arrived at the wrong answer. Especially after Arc 6, I think Subaru has arrived at the wrong answer as to why these problems have come for him. It's not that he is getting in his own way, or that he's anxious, or that he's holding himself back. It's, I am never good enough. That's the answer he's come to. But it's an answer he's accepted and thought that was the right answer. And now we starting to learn, maybe that wasn't the right answer. Maybe that's not the direction here.
Yeah,
it's not about being a self-sacrificing hero. It's about doing your best to help those around you. That's the kind of hero Subaru should be. Yeah.
One point that's always... I love that episode, what is it? Is it son and... What did I say?
Father
Parent and child.
Parent and child, yeah.
Parent and child. Yeah, that episode is always so great to me. But one thing that always stood out to me is the scene with his mother at the end, in which he misinterprets her meaning. And it feels like he still hasn't learned what she meant there. He still thinks as long as everything works out in the end, it doesn't matter how things go, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is him kind of having to reckon with that mistake, through this arc as well as a child,
Yeah, and I think that may be one of the questions. We may even see it in the narration at a near end part of this arc or the next arc, of that exact question, that homework she gave him, quote unquote. What's your answer to that? But yeah, we kind of learn an interesting detail about Obart, which I didn't expect, but now on the context of the side stories we read last time makes a lot more sense. Abel offers up after Subaru reveals his true intentions, and Obart's like, no, I don't know what you mean. And Abel's like, oh, interesting. Do you want to know how to get past the Yang Sword and kill the Emperor? And Obart's eyes is just like, oh, I mean, I'm not actually that interested, but how about we play a game and you let me know? And he offers to play tag. I know this is, you would think this to be a point of analysis, but I actually wanted to talk about this. Subaru makes a point of thinking this almost feels like a cultural thing from the Shinobi village. And then I got a flash of horror, realizing that the way that tag is played by Obart throughout this phase is probably how the children in the Shinobi village are treated. In that sense of, probably. You've got to be quick on your feet, find potential, do stuff, do anything to survive. And if you don't, you're gonna die. Like there's no second chance. It's quick on your feet, have potential, or be left behind and left to the wolves.
So I won't lie. The whole tag and hide and seek part of this phase is one of the major downsides for it to me. I really dislike that approach of going for it, because he's already turned them into kids, and it feels like Tapei's just making a joke of
it's a little bit.
Like the conflict now that they've been reduced to kids is playing children's games.
Right, but I like the obvious tonal. They make it tonally resonant in the fact that obviously the tag ends with their death, and I think if it was anything more if it was less than that, I think it would do a bit disservice to the tone that they've set up throughout the rest of this arc, or this phase, I should say.
Yeah.
And I think that makes me feel a little bit better about it. I also feel like the nature of it is interesting too, in which it's not tag as in the, we know as people playing tag.
Yeah.
This is a joke. There's a game and chasing them, right? Here, it seems like Dunkelkin really doesn't care. He sees the weakness in opening and he takes it immediately, and he just doesn't care,
He's being forceful. He's doing it simultaneously in a way that amuses him and in a way that he feels they have the most advantage. Because he can leverage... In this situation, he can leverage whatever he wants. It's really him that's in power here. And Obart then makes a point of, oh, tag would be too difficult. You'll never catch me. So instead, we're going to do a game. Subaru's like, hide and seek. Okay, hide and seek. Instead of catching me once, you have to find me 3 times. He gives his first clue, and he leaves. And as the party is about to leave, they're starting to panic. They're like, oh, 2 to 3 hours. Fuck, how do we do this? Subaru's like, oh, I figured it out, guys. They leave the inn, they go back in, and Subaru's like, ha, found you! And he says it in the most kid-like, oh, it's really cute. It's a really cute moment.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's really sweet.
It's funny because it's the type of thing that you'd think of as well. Like, it's the moment where it's like, what, like, a magician's like...
The answer's obvious, like, immediately. Like,
yeah. It's the thing where it's like, a magician's like, choose I've hidden the ball somewhere in this room, and there's 3 cups under the thing, and it's like, where did they hide it? And it's like, oh, it's still in their hand, right? That type of thing. And it's one of those things that you guess if you have enough, smarts and puzzles and stuff like these, like tricks, right?
Yeah.
So if you think of the very first trick that could possibly be the most obvious trick ever, that's the obvious trick, and he found it. So I think that's funny. Yeah.
And we think, okay, so we're gonna focus on this. It's gonna be a childlike game, and that's gonna be our point of like through line through the next part of this phase. No, not really, because Abel's like, well, there's nothing in the rules that says we can't recruit other people to help us. So let's take this huge sack of gold I have and go to a tavern and recruit people. They die. Like
immediately, yes.
Immediately. They go outside, a scarlet light hits Subaru, and he returns to the point where he's named the game for Obart. So his checkpoint has moved up past the conversation where they need to make sure they're safe.
Doesn't it go back to before Obart proposed tag?
It goes to before he's named the game of catching him 3 times and where he's hiding, which Subaru names hide and seek, which Obart likes. But yeah, that's his new return point. So Satella has moved, not Satella, the Witch of Envy has moved his checkpoint up because that conversation, he's gone past the dangerous part of that conversation. So this, immediately as a reader, you think, oh, this is a different threat. This isn't Obart, right? And yeah, Subaru starts to panic. And this is a really interesting moment that I wasn't expecting. He breaks the taboo.
Yes, this is where he also, at this point, it's like, you can see that it's hitting his mental abilities as well, the regression effect on him.
Yes.
Because Subaru hasn't broken that taboo since, I think, Arc 3. I don't think he does it in 5 or 6. At least,
that's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
Amnesia Baru did it, but not like
Baru
regular Subaru.
But regular Subaru only breaks it in Arc 4, but he doesn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, because he speaks it to a kid now.
Yeah,
right.
But Subaru has not actively the Subaru we know has not actively broken the taboo on purpose or like incidentally in a long time.
This is interesting too because the taboo obviously manifests in interesting ways sometimes where you're like, oh, that didn't break it, this one did, right?
Yeah.
It's another thing where it's like, yeah, we'll go out there, we'll be killed, and then bam. So I don't necessarily blame him. It's not like he's instantly being like, out of character being like, oh yeah, I have this ability that I know that we're gonna die 100%, right? It's more like, if we step out there, I think we're probably gonna die, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you could pass off. I'm like, I always think about it like this. I'm like, is it something that you could pass off as just being overly cautious? Because that's how it seems like in the past, right?
I think for Subaru specifically, it's not the issue of what he's saying, it's how he's saying it. It's the tone. Like, because he's panicking, he's urgent, he's like, guys, the way he's saying it is almost as if this is about to happen. That's the issue.
Taboo is always about intention. Like, intentionally revealing that he either knows this or that he does it.
Yeah. And it really scares Subaru. In this regressed form, he's genuinely terrified. And we get a really cute character moment that I wanted to mention. We even get an illustration of this, by the way. It's so cute. Medium grabs Subaru after the taboo hits him and hugs him to comfort him. she says, I think she says something along the lines of like, if you feel my heartbeat, you know, like you feel that there's someone there for you, kind of thing. It's the kind of thing she's getting at. It's the moment that made me love like Medium is a character that's up there for me now. I love Medium so much. Her energy, her positivity, her willingness to do whatever it takes to comfort and help her friends. It's genuinely very beautiful.
Put her at the top of our tier list for a reason.
Yeah, she is so wonderful.
But we also at this point are getting like the kind of the forgetfulness too, where like he's struggling to pull up like Beatrice's name, and it has to like almost wait for a reminder for what her name was, and just kind of remembering her as the girl in the dress. And
it starts to scare Subaru, and we're getting to a point where Subaru's now starting to get more and more stressed. Now he's starting to panic. I'm not remembering the people close to me. It's like he's remembering the events, but not the names.
It's Amnesia Brood Part 2. No, I'm joking.
Part 2, kind of? Question mark?
Part 0.25.
Yeah. And Abel is starting to become very critical of Subaru. I think he outright just calls him a coward. We get a really interesting character moment, which I want to talk to you guys about, with Al. Al stands up for Subaru and gets very angry with Abel, and basically says stuff along the lines of like, you know, you can't understand what's going on here. Like, you know, like don't be that way to him. Subaru has to make a point of stepping in between them and making sure their relationship doesn't crack too much before their party like splits apart.
Yeah. Another thing is Al sees himself as a coward. I think that's something that we're kind of clear on.
Yes.
He proudly sees himself as a coward. So when that gets levied around as an insult, he's like, wait. Yes, there's nothing wrong with being afraid. That's what I use my authority for.
That's what my power is for. And at this point, this Al doesn't know that his power isn't here anymore. He still thinks he's got his authority. He's not experienced that loop that Subaru has. So he's still playing to that his defense mechanism, right? Like his heart armor almost that Julius says back in Arc 5. The thing that keeps him going. So yeah, we get to this moment and we get an outright kind of like confirmation that Abel is promising Yorna marriage for the thing for her support in his letter. He basically kind of says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to give her what she desires," which is, what does she desire? Abel.
And you know what? I would sign that instantly. Oh no, I have to marry you.
Do you know? It's like, oh, this is the toughest decision of my life. Of course, I'll marry you, Yorna.
Yeah, and we're gonna do more about how the marriage seems to be a big part of this, anyways.
But from here, they do manage to, or we move on to kind of the next major crisis in this phase of everyone outside waiting to kill him.
Yeah. So horned demi-humans specifically are clearly the ones that killed Subaru in the previous loop, and are the ones that are targeting Abel, Subaru, all the group. And this is a huge problem, because they realize at one point when they go to the tavern to complete Abel's original objective, there's at least 100 of them surrounding them outside. And this is crazy, specifically because their combat power has been severely reduced. So they can't fight this way out of here. So Abel asks Tarita, this is the main kind of moment we get with Tarita in this phase, to fight them off and distract them. And I had an interesting discussion with Connor here at LAX about this moment, which I'm going to reinforce here because it's a really interesting discussion point, where we were talking about in the previous phase how Tarita, she feels inferior, she feels like she can't live up to something. She clearly made a mistake of some sort, right? But she isn't inferior. She's incredibly gifted because she kicks everyone's ass, and the only reason she has to start running and fighting more like guerrilla tactics is because she runs out of fucking arrows. Like, Tarita is insane. She's fighting off this mass of empowered demi-humans by this technique called soul marriage, which is apparently the major technique of Yorna.
Sure is.
She applies it to those that she loves, which incidentally is the entire population.
Is the
of
entire
city.
city.
Yeah, including the city itself, which we'll talk more about later.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah, and Abel's like, this is crazy because soul marriage can only work between a couple people, and if it gets beyond that, you start to lose yourself.
Right, because your odd is split so heavily that you're gonna, you're gonna die,
Because the way
dude.
it's described is literally you insert a part of your odd into that other person with this soul marriage technique.
Yeah.
So there's part of Yorna's ode in all of these people, and that's why they're so deeply connected. And that's why we now know that this city is impossible to take by conventional military force. Like, there's no way you could fight in this city against its creator.
The establishment of this technique and the way that it works is what I wanted to bookmark our discussion earlier for, because that is just, it flies in the face of everything that the rest of Wallachia stands for,
Yes.
of individual strength and ability, in that Yorna being here and the like adoration and love all the people have for her and her love for all of them in return brings everyone in the city up onto equal footing, which is reflected in even the city design and architecture.
Yeah.
Where there's like no clear like higher status of people or even like elevated anything other than the palace, which is
With
just
Yorna.
a reflection of Yorna herself.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating too, because then you understand it's not just like a like what we understood before of Yorna just rebelling for that almost the hell of it. But it's also a rebellion in the sense of she is like opposite to the genuine ideals of Wallachia. Like, there's a genuine cognitive dissonance between her people and the general people of Wallachia here and their cultural understanding of the world.
And we learn that this city is a haven.
Yeah.
It's a haven for all of the people that Wallachia scorns and whatnot. And I think that sort of sanctuary aspect of Yorna's, ideal really shows her character, and as well as the fact that she genuinely loves these people, right? Because, we know how powers work in stories like this. It's very literal. It's like you can't activate it if you don't love all your citizens, and she does.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be a politician and just play lip service or like whatever, a leader and just be like, yeah, I love my subjects and not actually 100% mean it. But she 100% means it because obviously it activates, and we'll get to it not activating later on.
Yes.
Not parasocial at all, just genuine, and that's why I love
genuine,
so
right?
She
truly thinks of them as her children, right? It's
a family.
A family, a collective people that she can protect and that she wants to protect because who else would, right? That's her reasoning.
And we specifically learn later this is it's got general applications of how she believes it, but she specifically centers on the children that are abandoned by their parents or their guardians or by the society that should protect them. To her, it's really important that if someone has nowhere else to go, she is the one that offers that hand, because she will love them unconditionally. And I'm just going to say it, Yorna as a character not only fascinates me, like her design is amazing, her even the way she speaks is really intriguing, but even to her character, like I can understand that element of her character of loving children and this desire to protect is a deep-seated part of her backstory we're probably going to learn later on, which I'm very curious about. But yeah, we have this scary moment of like, oh shit, these guys are really strong, because Abel because he dumbs it down for Subaru in like his Lagunican way, because he's like, the Empire and Lagunica are very different, Subaru. So the reason why this is so OP in your terms is it's like spirit arts, where because they can rely on each other, they are stronger. And Ao and Subaru make a point of, oh, if it's kind of like spirit arts, does that mean they don't need the permission of Yorna to do this. And that's where we get into some of the kind of political intrigue, interestingly enough, of this. So it's
I
kind of
don't recall. Do they reveal the perpetrator in this phase for like who's behind this?
They speculate, and they do
Okay.
reveal the perpetrator later on. Yeah.
Okay.
So their speculation, they get to a point of they speculate it must be Tanza. She's a member of the horned race, and Abel is the one that comes to this conclusion where it's like horned races in particular in Wallachia are disdained because, you know, witch beasts have horns. And they make that connection between witch beasts and horned demihumans. So horned demihumans, which this is rather interesting. Is this perhaps the reason why the Oni are so disliked in Lagunica too?
You're locking it in. You're 100%
Yeah,
right.
because I would assume, especially with the mechanics of how the Oni work, they're probably the most powerful of the horned races. So that's not only why the Oni were so scarce before they were like completely genocided, but it explains why they were disregarded by general society. So yeah, we get this kind of like situation of, wow, they are trying to intervene here. Abel makes a speculation of, oh, they don't want Yorna to take our side and leave the city and leave their safe haven.
Yeah, and abandon them.
Yeah. And it's like a child clinging to their mother, even though they should be like, you know, flying from the nest and making their own life.
And honestly, they are, in a sense, by doing this, they are using their mother's gifts for their own selfish ends. You know what I mean? It really is that sort of. It's hard to say how it relates necessarily to Subaru at the moment, but like the idea that you're using your parents' influence as sort of like, I mean, actually, now that I think about it, this idea that somebody uses their parents' influence is the reason why he insulted Julius and whatnot. This sort of slight theme of like these children are one against little children, using their parents' powers to do ill. You know.
Yeah. It's that kind of thing where I think Yorna, especially with the direction this phase is taking and where I think it will go in the future, Yorna is going to be the character that teaches this child like Subaru that he is his father's son, he is his mother's son, and those parts of him are part of him and are valid, but he is his own individual person with his own strengths and weaknesses, and using the gifts his parents have given him, he should be kinder to himself. Because this is another important thing I want to talk in generalization about this phase in particular, is whilst Subaru is being very cruel to himself at points, as he tends to be, he's being less harsh on himself and more afraid of the people that are hurting him. Because as a child, if you're in a sort of situational threat, it's not, oh, like, I could have done so much immensely better to solve this. It's, these people are hurting me, I'm scared. It's that kindness to yourself. A bit of selfishness, almost, but not necessarily a bad selfishness if it's not taken to an extreme.
It's also a
pity.
more honest expression of the way Subaru has felt, like, almost the entire time. Like, anytime, say, Arc 2, when Ram and Rem are, like, actively hurting him and attacking him, it's got to be exactly what he's feeling. It was, I'm terrified of these very powerful maids that are hurting me. And he, like, retreats to Beatrice after that.
He buries it. That's actually this sort of idea. It's this idea that he's bottling all these feelings deep down. I think this is the more passionate, emotional response to this that he wants to express. It also gives me an inclination. We know that the mental regression is happening, but I don't wonder if this isn't his initial actual feelings every single time it happens, right?
I think it absolutely is. And I really want to look forward to when this does get a proper anime season, because I really want to hear Ed the psychiatrist talk about like the concept of the psychological inner child that a lot of psychologists will talk over.
Yes,
and
exactly.
What this means for Subaru. I don't know enough on that subject other than you need to take care of your inner child and allow it to express. And that this is probably a really good representation of Subaru having the chance to do that.
ReZero recently, Arc 6, Arc 7, oh, your shadow, literally,
Yeah.
your freaking inner child, your gender identity, all this stuff, being able to balance it, and like all this stuff, like you're who you are as a person. It's like all these like philosophical themes. Topay's giving people watching this a guide, and he always has been. This is the entire part of ReZero, to kind of help people, young adults, kind of grow into their own.
Yes, it's and I guess before we talk more about specifics of the story, we could talk a bit about the thematics, like deeper subtext and meaning here a little bit. It's and this is just my generalized understanding, so if anyone has deeper knowledge, you're very welcome to give context in the comments. But to my general understanding, this is true in the entire world, but specifically in a lot of Asian countries and Japan, there's a lot of stigma around mental health and coming to terms with oneself, because a lot of, especially Japanese society, is very... It's not cosmopolitan. It's like it's about everyone, and there's not much individualism in that sense, and there's not much like introspection and full understanding and acceptance of what mental health means. And I think it makes ReZero a very important thematic story, especially for the young, like a young Japanese person, like a young Japanese boy or man, where you need to be in touch with your inner child. You need to have this introspection, because while Subaru is going through these terribly traumatic events, and that may not be something you can relate to, you can relate to these feelings of fear and anxiety and depression he has, and how he arrives at the wrong answers, like a lot of people will, but then eventually arrives to the right answer, and how that can help guide your own path even a little bit. It's really telling to me how it's wholesome for how dark of a story this is, how wholesome Taboo's message is with this story. He's trying to tell you should feel sympathy for Subaru. You should feel sympathy for yourself. Don't give yourself excuses, and that's the sort of character Ram plays for Subaru quite interestingly in the situation of, don't give yourself stupid excuses. Don't let yourself run free, but allow yourself to have sympathy for yourself. If you are hurt, you should empathize with yourself as much as if someone else is hurt, and have empathy for them.
Yeah, and the thing with ReZero is that it is, people talk about the bombastic stories and animes and whatnot, and media coming from Japan. But I will say there's few that, even if it's not, every detail is super meaningful, as we've discussed in this arc so far. It is probably one of the most meaningful in terms of the intentions behind the narrative that is being told, and through the medium that it's being told through. And I think that is sort of, we've talked about this many times before, but I feel like this is the actualization of what the isekai genre is supposed to provide to somebody who's reading. It's trying to give you a blueprint of what somebody starting their life from zero looks like. It's giving you the ability to relearn. His return by death is not only just a checkpoint, it is also a chance to correct mistakes, not only physical, but emotional and spiritual as well. And I think this is one of the things that he learns through this loop, and we'll get to it at the end, but it's like there is more than just physically solving an obstacle that is being guided through these experiences. He's also having to solve it within himself. And yeah, that usually is the more difficult, and also the more cathartic one to solve.
And I think that's part of the magic of what makes ReZero, as you say, a cathartic story. Like a genuinely emotionally fulfilling story. A story that touches your heart, makes you feel emotion, and maybe gets you in touch with your own emotions. Because I think that's genuinely the thing Taboo is desiring to do with the story. And I think he does a great job with that. But moving on from that point, I guess we'll have a general discussion of what happens for the rest of this mini part of the phase, and then get to the real the real stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah, the last 2 chapters.
Yeah, the last 2 chapters. That's not a joke for the audience at home. So we get this. We're in this tough situation. We're surrounded by these horned demi-humans.
Citizens, yeah.
And we're getting in a tough situation. Al is pointing out to Subaru, bro, you're starting to regress like really hard. Like everyone is noticing around Subaru that he's fully regressed at this point. He's not at the same point he was before as an adult in terms of how he's viewing the world and even how he's speaking. But then, kind of in almost a hypocritical way, Al is becoming aggressive and angry at everyone and the situation. He's starting to panic. He's losing control. And when he realizes later on for this part of the mini phase that his ability no longer works, he falls to his knees and shuts down during a very important fight. A young horned demi-human boy grabs Subaru, apologizes to him, and throws him in the air to kill him.
And who comes to save him?
This was crazy, by the way. Louie saves Subaru and takes a hit for him and seemingly about to bleed out and die. And this is a turning point, I will say. A mini turning point before the big turning point we get to.
Yeah, I think this is the moment where it all clicks for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And we get a really interesting moment of introspection where Subaru has tried before. The reason why this happened is because Subaru tried to sacrifice himself so the others could escape or be a bit more safer. But everyone but Subaru has been hurt in this situation because Subaru tried to sacrifice himself. This is a specific point that's mentioned in the narration of everyone has been hurt but Subaru because Subaru tried to take it all upon himself. Subaru is about to give up in this moment, and Medium claps him back into reality. It's like, Louie has just been like fucking destroyed, go take care of her. And Medium is so cool and goes to fight off their threat. And they realize that if this wasn't a child that was using this soul marriage technique, they'd all be dead by now. And the only reason they're alive is because this is a single child that's fighting them. And they're only holding him back. That's how powerful this technique is. Louie's been collapsed in a tent. It's a really important moment of Subaru starting to panic because he questions why he feared Louie in the first place. He's forgetting about what happened. Like in the narration, he's like, what did she do? What has she done to me? He's starting to lose his bias against her. And then he comes to this realization. She was hurt trying to protect me. He grabs her hand and he begs her from the bottom of her heart not to die. And she starts to heal.
Yeah, right at this point, when she got hurt and Subaru was like seeing that, I thought that's how Tappe was going to like wrap up the Louie and like him being with the Sin Archbishop story. And that was going to be how he got the gluttony power.
Yeah.
Was at this moment, genuinely. And then he was going to feel super guilty about like finally coming to accept her and then losing her immediately after. But nope, it keeps going. I'm really glad it did.
I'm really glad,
hindsight.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I'm thrilled that it happened. In that moment, I was angry that I was wrong.
You know, it's going to come a point where you're like, I was expecting her to die here. Hey, when she does die for real, and I'm not saying she's going to, but I am saying she's going to. And when she does, you're not going to want it to happen.
I think one of the shock moments at either the end of this arc or near the end of the next arc is going to be Louie dies, it's permanent, Subaru can't do anything, and he's got the witch factor now. That's my cooking theory. I like that you think that too, Gold. You're based as hell, sir.
I will not speak to this. I cannot.
I cannot say anything. Yeah, but as I mentioned before, Al has collapsed and he's useless in this fucking fight. He's mumbling about how his power is gone. He's lost everything. Like, how is he going to do anything? He's lost all hope. Abel saves Al's life before he's killed and just fucking kicks him out the way.
Deserved.
Deserved.
So that's a point of discussion I wanted to ask you two about. Of like, how do you think Al knows that his power isn't working?
Because he gets hurt he gets minorly hurt in this fight from what I remember, and his power doesn't activate, and it was a near-death experience as well. So I'm assuming his thought is like, oh, wait, what? Why isn't this working?
And one thing that occurs in this arc is this idea that their authorities are kind of glitching, right? And I think it has to do with the activation triggers that they're both aware of, right? So I think Subaru is acutely aware of his activation trigger being, dying, right? But then, of course, he's mistaking, the taboo. He's feeling weird about the resets, like the reset points. I think Al is probably going through similar experiences where he tries to dodge something or whatever through his authority, and then it just like hits him anyways, and then he's out of it, and he's like, "Oh, I can't use it." So I think that's probably something like that.
I actually have just talking about it, so I have a theory that we're going to talk about when we get to the end here. I think I figured it out. Okay. So we're in this situation. It's really tense. Abel is the only one that's really standing up right now because Medium is getting absolute destroyed and she's the only other person that's fighting. And Abel doesn't have fighting power. So when this group of demi-humans surrounds them and they're about to die, Abel pulls out, which I think is his main bluffing hand of card, because he says, if you come any closer, you will be burned by the flames of judgment, which I believe are the flames of the Yang sword, which is something he does not have in his possession, and is also the bargaining chip he used with Obart earlier. Priscilla has that. That's the sword of the Emperors, and Priscilla has it, and he doesn't.
I can't speak to this.
But
yeah,
then this is the next crazy fucking thing I want to talk about with you guys, because this is just so awesome and also kind of scary. Louie starts healing her wounds and then starts using some of the abilities that Lei was using
eclipsing.
In Arc 6. She starts eclipsing. She starts doing the blinking. Subaru is like, oh my god, I was right to fear her. And then realizes she's just beating people up. And then Subaru's main mission from this point of this mini arc is stopping Louie from killing people. Because she'll knock them out and then go to kill them on the floor, and Subaru has to stop her.
Yeah, it's crazy that she still has clearly she has the power of gluttony within her still.
By the way,
despite Rem not being able to smell it, it is still there.
Which means not only if she does die will Subaru likely inherit her witch factor, but also, this is even the crazier thing, is she uses it to protect Subaru. Like, she clearly has a deep connection, like, she has a lot of care towards Subaru. She's using this specifically to protect Subaru, and she clearly has some affection for Medium, but not really for Al or Abel. But she's specifically using this to protect Subaru, and Subaru is conflicted because on the one hand, he's like, I was right, she can still do this. It's not even just that she's dangerous and can hurt people. These are the lives of people these gluttonies have trampled upon, and she is using them as fuel, almost. Like,
I just realized something, this might be obvious to everybody. I just realized that she's probably got the other third of Lai's gluttony now that he's dead.
Like she has 2/3 of it rather than 1/3.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's just fucking crazy. But that also, in perspective, makes her the most powerful combatant on their side now. Despite her being a child. And probably not having too much experience using that part of Lei's technique that he took.
Well, not only is she a child, but she like is barely more than an actual baby.
Yeah,
Like
like she
90% of
can't
the time,
speak.
she can't even talk. She calls him ooh.
Yeah. And this is where we get to one of the mini turning points of the story, which by the way, I was not expecting this at all, but I was grinning all the way through reading this. Subaru realizes that, so we get this moment where we talk about how like Abel interrogates one of the sheep people and figures out that it's Tanza that's doing this, and we've talked all about that. But this is where we get to the real meat and bones of this. It seems Tanza is working with Obart to stop them from winning their game, and also to make it so they're getting out of this situation good. Al is getting more and more frustrated and angry and slowly starting to come to his senses, but getting mad. And then the big reveal hits because Al gets pissed off at Subaru and is like, you are hiding something about this girl. Look at what she just did. Tell me who she is. Now, the Subaru of before I imagine would have probably lied in this situation. But this Subaru is honest and says she's the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony.
Just
And
drops it. Yep.
Medium, the person who's closest to her, apart from Subaru, looks at her with fear. Al draws his dao out and is ready to cut her down at the spot. And Subaru, like always in these tense situations, looks to Abel to resolve it. And Abel says, any of those, I don't know how it is in the kingdom, but any of those who serve the witch in this empire are executed.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Looks like Subaru has done goofed, but also this probably would have come out anyway at some point.
Yeah, this being revealed to everybody is so interesting, obviously, for a lot of reasons. It throws more wrenches, assuming that always gets saved, right? And they all know that she is the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. That sort of thing, maybe if they come back and reconvene, they'll get like a moment where they're like, fine, we won't tell anybody about it, but like it's gonna be a thing that they're gonna be thinking about. You know, it's definitely a thing because obviously they're like, what is Subaru? Like, I wonder if even Al's like, maybe he's the Archbishop of, say like Pride or Envy or whatever. And that is scary thought,
I reading even just like the character facial expressions and the way they even like speak in this scene, Tapei did a really good job of characterizing the disdain. Like, because Subaru's situation is unique in that obviously he has disdain for the witch cult, but he doesn't have the cultural feeling of this world of disdain. He has the personal things that they've done to him. He doesn't have the cultural history element of this witch cult is the boogeyman for this.
Yeah, universal, right? It's not just the
It's the witch and the witch cult are the boogeyman of this world. They're the person you tell your kids about if you're being too sinful or naughty, and they're gonna come take you.
Because like it doesn't really matter to them because the entire rest of the world was swallowed by the Witch of Envy, right? So what's remaining all knows the fact that we used to have half of the world. It's gone now. It doesn't matter if you're from the north, from Karagi, from the Empire or the Kingdom, you're going to know exactly who destroyed the rest of the world.
So crazy, intense moment. They all disregard Louie and basically say that an Al is pressuring, we need to kill her right now. Subaru disagrees with this, especially after Louie goes out of her way to save him. He feels it's wrong for him to not defend her. And Louie grabs Subaru and does one of the techniques Lei has of jumping. And just blink and jumps away.
Yep, teleports away.
Subaru then thinks of knowing... He knows the logical thing to do in this situation would have been to let them deal with her. But his heart can't allow it. and he believes he's more of an idiot due to his infantilization, and this is the moment that was crazy for me. He believes it's unfair for a 10-year-old to decide the future of the Empire and the lives of others. And he tries to spell this, and he says that the original him would have made the right decision. And he has to return from being the little boy Natsuki Subaru to the young man Natsuki Subaru. And this is a point where I'm like, this is him truly starting from zero, in a sense.
Or like -7.
-7, yeah. And this is, as we discussed earlier, I believe where we're going to start to see the gifted kid side of Subaru. The gifted Subaru. Because even when he gets out of this regression, which I'm sure he will at some point, this is going to be the foundation for him knowing that he's gifted in his own ways. And he then thinks, I will be able to make the right decision about Louie when I'm of full mental adult state of mind. I can't make that decision right now, so I'm going to put it off and protect her until I can. And he makes a decision that I was never expecting to happen, at least not in this point of the story. He's going to find Obart in this game without relying on Abel or the others. It's just Louie and Subaru. Holy shit. I was never expecting this. Like, I never expected Subaru... I expected Subaru to get separated from this group, but I never thought it would be like an intentional thing of Subaru being like, yeah, I have to do this. It's really, really interesting.
At that point, what else could he do, though?
Yeah, like, there's no other option for him here. And in response to that, we see a little bit of the perspective of the others as they leave. Hour's very frustrated. Medium is annoyed at herself for being so afraid of Louie. And Abel says, we're not going to find them. We're going to focus on our objectives. And Hour's like, he has the mind of a child. He's going to die. And Abel's like, if you or Medium are no longer useful, I'm going to leave you behind. And then we switch back to Subaru and Louie on their misadventures of Subaru trying to stop Louie from killing people.
Yeah, it's a lot of that going through.
Yeah.
There's not really a whole lot that kind of happens at this point, other than this is where they briefly run into this strange man in a robe, right? Do they give his name here?
They do, yeah. So there's 2 character moments I want to note down before this, and then So Subaru introspects that maybe Rem would be bothered by the persecution that the Horned Racers have, but Ram wouldn't, because he believes her strength is not really bound by an understanding of race or title.
Yeah, that tracks with me as well.
Yeah. And what was the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh yeah, he makes a point of thinking, even now that Louie is showing to have the authority of gluttony, and she's been someone that's been involved in the deaths of people and the taking of others, I will never allow that to happen again. I will not let her hurt these people. Not just because he doesn't want people to be hurt, but also because he doesn't want her to have that sin bared on her, is the kind of impression.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this idea that blank slate, we can't allow her to become this thing that she was before.
Yeah. But then we meet a very strange man, who helps Subaru avoid the people that are pursuing him and Louie. And he then's like, oh, this is the perfect moment. The alignment of the stars change every moment, and it's up for you, of course, to either shun this moment or accept it. He's like, who the fuck are you, sir? Why are you speaking in such riddles?
Yeah. This is the 3rd time pretty recently, or the 4th time really, both Priscilla and Al both mentioned stuff about stars. It's getting pretty heavy-handed now, ain't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, but yeah, I think that this becoming a more prominent theme in the story, drawing your attention to it if you weren't already privy to it.
Yeah.
The idea that stars and constellation, all these things have a bigger
Importance.
cosmological importance, or perhaps magical importance in the story.
And yeah, we kind of get a vibe of this character, which I thought was really funny. Like his interactions actually made me laugh a lot. He introduced himself as Ublik, I think is the way you say it.
Yeah, Ublik. Or Ublik.
Yeah, that sounds right. Ublik.
And Subaru constantly makes comments because Ublik says very strange things, and Subaru's like, "Oh, his dangerous adult meter is crazy high right now. This guy is creepy. This guy's creeping me out. What's he gonna do to me and Louie? We're kids. This is not okay." And he constantly is just like, your dangerous adult meter is going really high, sir. Calm it down."
Honestly, just Subaru. If I wish I could tell you this in person. Good decision.
Yeah.
Get the fuck away from this guy. You made the right call.
And then Subaru is trying to leave because obviously this guy's creeping him out, and he's like, "Oh, thanks for helping," but he tries to leave. And then he's like, "Oh, no, you can't leave. What about mutual help? You know, like I helped you, you helped me." And then he says everyone hates him, and he asks if Subaru does. And Subaru makes a really interesting response where he's like, "I would prefer not to hate you," to which really amuses this guy. And he's like, "This is all the fate of the stars." This is so wild. And then he gives him like a fortune teller sit down where he's like, "Oh yeah, I could tell you like the answers you seek." And Subaru's like, "Oh my god, this guy's a fucking scammer as well as a weirdo." And then he tells him, "The answer you seek is within you." And the answer he seeks that's within him that he now realizes is the answer to Obart's second riddle of, an abyss with a great view. It's the top of the castle. That fucker Obart has gone to the top of the castle in the middle of the city, and that's his next hiding spot, because you'd have to go through the castle through Yorna to get to him. He does not play fair.
No. He's a fucking asshole. Just real quick, I do want to say, Ublik, I'm one of those people. Just go away.
Yeah.
I hate you too. Sorry, but I do. Go away.
Be gone. And he's just very weird and strange. Subaru just says to him, I'm leaving. But he's like, "You're clearly a sheltered kid. I won't say anything bad about you, so just please go back to your parents. You don't seem dangerous. Just behave yourself and stop scamming people." And Ublik's like, "Oh shit, Kathma, the servant of Vincent, needs me back right now, because Ublik is a stargazer and someone that serves in Vincent's court."
Stargazer, huh?
Dun dun dun.
We
To which Abel has previously mentioned, right? These stargazers, they don't seem to be too trustworthy.
Nope. And that's literally all I can say.
Yeah. But yeah. We go forward. Subaru is like, "Okay, we have to get to this castle, Louie. You've got this ability to teleport. So instead of us trying to break our way in, we're just going to teleport up and through this castle up to the top, and we're going to catch Obart." And they do so. But then, it seems, at least this is the first impression you get. They're in a corridor that they've just teleported to up above the castle. They're about to go up. And who should appear but one of my new favorite characters, Yorna-sama! And she's like, "Oh, fancy meeting you children here. Can I help?" And then she just makes the assumption that they're Tanza's friends.
Yeah, they're just more kids who need assistance from a loving mother.
Yeah, and
which is not wrong.
No, not at all. And Yorna's like, "Oh, I'm so glad Tanza's friends have visited finally. They never do. She doesn't allow this to happen. She needs to act more like a child than she does."
Yeah, she's too busy practicing her stationery.
It's really funny. And then Subaru's like, oh my god, that's Yorna. Oh my god. And then Yorna's like, oh, you two kids, you're so cute, you're holding hands. Can I help? You seem like you need help. And Subaru's just like, a scary adult tricked me to play a bad game. And then she's like, oh, don't you worry, I'll spank this nasty adult. And then Subaru's like, I cannot imagine Yorna spanking Abel. That would be terrible.
I can.
Where's the art?
Where is it at? And we get a rather interesting discussion about the city itself, where Subaru's like, he tells Yorna honestly about the city that this is like, it's the closest you can get to a utopia. These people of different backgrounds, different ages, different races, just different everything coming together. And even in this chaotic society built around Yorna, having this unity of respect and equality and freedom. And he believes Chaos Flame to be the true, like almost the true meaning of what freedom is. And
I agree with him. Chaos Flame is a wondrous city. We've talked about in the past of like in a couple streams or like comments or whatever of like what we would do if we were brought to Lagunica or into this world. My answer now is make a break for Chaos Flame.
100%. Good luck on the crossing borders. Yeah.
Look, I think I know the passageway to get under there now. We've read the side content how to get there.
we got the map there.
Or I could just cross and wait for those ninjas to come in. It's like, wait, no, personal friend of Yorna Mishiguire. Just take me to her and everything will be explained.
You gotta dodge the bandits.
Yeah. And, we learn this sort of thing of, like, Subaru... Yorna questions Subaru and's like, be honest with me, what's going on? And he's like, I think people of high status are scary. And she's like, I really appreciate your honesty about my city and about people of high status. There's not many children that are actually fully honest to the adults around them. And she gets really happy and starts to smile. And it's almost like in a giddy mother-like way, just like, oh my god, this kid's just so cute and honest to me. There's not a bad bone in his body. I'm going to go along with anything he does. And we get to that point earlier where we talked about Yorna wants this city to be a safe haven for not just as many people that need to run away, but also children. Children that have nowhere to go, and their voices would be unnoticed, even if they raised them. And she says, if no one's going to lend an ear to children, who will? In the last place they could possibly go, she is the one that will lend her ear to the worries of children. She's not going to look down upon children for their worries. She's not going to disregard them. She's not going to tell them their worries mean less than adult worries. For a lot of, in a lot of situations, you find as a kid, especially in members outside of your family, and sometimes, unfortunately, members within your family, when you're a child, they're talked down to you. Not in a way of helping you understand in a simpler way, in a way of you're inferior, or, you wouldn't understand, so why should I bother explaining it to you? That way of looking down upon children. And in a sense, in that way, you could consider children, in a way, to be people that can be oppressed by the adults they're supposed to rely on. And Yorna is someone that directly stands against even that concept. She is someone that will lend her ear always to the children that have their worries. It's really interesting. I think it says a lot about her character.
It says a ton about her character, and I desperately wish I had not read to the point that I have read to, so I could talk more about it.
I also know all about her, so it's not even...
You know a lot, but there's some stuff that I don't think was in the part that you've read.
Yeah, there's probably... obviously I haven't read beyond this point, but I read a side story, and it makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, after that really cool moment, like, Yorna, just from that, has become one of the most interesting characters to me. I want her more on the screen. I want to read more of her dialogue. I want a chapter from her perspective, god damn it. I want to know more.
Yeah,
But
me too.
We get to a point of a crossroads of Subaru just apologizes to Yorna because in the previous phase, he gets the impression of her that she's like some crazy evil woman because Abel just says that to her and she seems like very strange and erratic. But Subaru
And we've
now
not seen
realizes-
anything else from the other divine generals. Like
Yeah.
we hear that the first number 1 is an incomprehensible monster that nobody likes.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we see that number 2 and number 3 are incomprehensible monsters
Monsters
that
that
are
nobody
brutal
likes.
monsters
The-
that are brutal
that's-
murderers.
That's a great point.
Another one usurped the throne.
Yeah.
And then this is the first one that we meet who seems to be any kind of decent person.
The only one who seems to have even a smitten of positive review from Abel is the one general that stays behind to defend him while he flees from the throne room.
I just realized this is going to be... Yeah. That's true, that him too, yeah. This is probably the first Divine General they're going to recruit, obviously, Yorna. And it makes a lot of sense because she seems like the best one in terms of personality.
Yes. Genuinely very sweet. And, Subaru apologizes. He's like, I was wrong about you. You're a very sweet and specifically a kind woman. And I think there was no better descriptor of Yorna than as a kind woman. Because we hear before that people consider her to be loving to those that love her and cruel to her enemies. But I think it may be better to say cruel to those who hurt the ones she loves. She's very...
And she seems like a good character, a judge of character in that way. So it's like, if you're vanquishing the evil that would hurt your family, I mean, I don't call that too much evil. I don't think...
I was about to say, it's one of those things
there.
where if it's that kind of thing of self-defense where someone is threatening your family and it's a appropriate response to fight back, I don't see a moral evil in that, personally. I think Yorna is definitely the character, apart from Medium and Flop, who most aligns with Subaru's worldview.
Give that to Medium. Honestly, even just from the stuff we've gotten from Flop, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Flop is a very kind person, but he's also extremely vengeful.
Yeah, it's revenge!
And, in a sense, Yorna is also kind of a lollymancer in the same way that Subaru is.
Yes!
In that she just brings all these kids around her and empowers them and makes them stronger and better versions of themselves.
Yeah.
It's a good reflection of that part of who Subaru is.
Yeah.
That's true. He the nurturing part, the part of Subaru that likes to watch people, help people and watch them grow, is exactly what Yorna embodies.
Because it's rather interesting too, because I think Subaru would prefer to play a more fatherly role in these sort of situations, but I think he plays a more motherly role to a lot of the children around him.
Pretty often, but he does have that father role.
He does
especially
too.
With Beatrice when Amelia's acting certain ways.
I'd
With
say
Louie in this arc, honestly.
I'd say he would be a very good parent because he can play both roles if he needs to. And he's good at doing both. He can provide that for a child. But that aside, Subaru's like, Yorna, miss, I'm scared. Could you help me with something? And then we see in transition, and this is the main meat and bones of this podcast we're going to be talking about for the next bit. We transition scenes to old man Obart on the top of the roof drinking. And Yorna, Louie, and Subaru appear. And Subaru's like, oh, look, I found you again, Obart. Hi.
Oh, this scene is such a game changer for the story as a whole. It's
100%.
the complete and total proof that Tappei was being serious when he said, I have been taking it easy on Subaru. It's time to take the kid gloves off.
It's terrifying. They at first Subaru at least just tries to talk to Obart, just understand him a bit more. And Yorna straight up intervenes and says, you have deceived these children. And not only have you deceived them, you've done wrong to them. and she gets very angry. And Subaru basically, not he doesn't actually, but he's kind of like in a mental way sticks his tongue out at Obart and it's like, it's only fair that I stick this girl on you because you stuck those hundreds of demi-humans on us earlier. And Obart's like, oh, yep, fair enough. I get it. I'm not mad about it. And then he asks a question which is really interesting to me because I feel like it's playing into something that Abel has planned. He asks Subaru, are you a part of the Valachian imperial family? You have the looks for it and you have the cunning. And that makes me think,
good.
Especially...
hold on. Gold got dropped from the call.
Oh, shit. Hello.
You good? Hello?
Yeah, hello.
You good?
Yeah, my Discord randomly crashed and I refreshed it.
Okay. Your recording still going okay?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It was just my Discord.
What did you last hear, Gold?
I was just hearing the stuff with Dunkel being like, super taunting him almost,
Yeah. And then we get this moment of Yorna confronting him, and then Subaru starts to taunt Obart a bit, and it's like, oh, it's only fair I get this lady on you after what you did to me. And then we get a really interesting thing that he mentions of, are you part of the Imperial Valachian family? Because not only do you have the looks for it, you have the cunning. And this makes me think that this may play into Abel's plan, and because I have a feeling he may try to, at least as like a thing that he will politically do, claim that Subaru as a child is a member of the Imperial Valachian family.
I think so too. I think it's going to be a feint.
No way.
No.
That's totally not
He's
his
definitely
plan.
not using Subaru at all.
He doesn't end this phase with saying, I don't want to stop him from being a 10-year-old anytime soon.
Yeah,
exactly.
He didn't come here with another dark-haired woman that was his close personal counselor and that he seemed very affectionate to and was spotted by divine generals. Like that? No.
Rubbing the back of your head.
So I guess the question
I literally was rubbing the back of my head.
Oh, shucks.
I guess the question we have to ask here then is his intent with this. Does this mean he's either going to use Subaru as a claimant to the throne, or is he going to use Subaru as like a legitimizer of, oh, this person is supporting me and he's a member of the Imperial family and he survived the selection process?
Yeah, that could be the case. I think you can't have him be the claim to the throne unless you're planning on killing him off, which I feel like that's not the case.
No.
Just on Valachian rule, he wouldn't be a claimant to the throne.
Right, he doesn't have the Yang sword.
Yeah, so it's more of a legitimizer for his own cause, right?
Exactly. So if you have somebody who's like, hey, I'm part of the royal family, I survived the selection, I'm young, this is the actual real Vincent, and then people are like, oh, he's a member of the royal family, he must know this, right?
Yeah,
and he's also the symbol of rebellion and all this stuff. So it's like, oh, great. This person who's been doing all this crazy revolutionary action did it in the name of the real emperor.
Yeah, so that adds legitimacy to his cause. Yeah, that makes political sense to me. And I think if Obart is because Obart is a very quick on his feet, not just street smart but cunning person. So if Obart is suspecting something like that, I think it puts a lot of weight behind the concept or idea, right?
Well, Obart also knows that Subaru is not actually a 9-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Right,
so
but
he would have to suspect that he's like Abel's brother or cousin.
Exactly.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, because that's sort of how it is. Like there was a lot of children from the previous Valachian emperor, so it's definitely possible.
But yeah, we get to a very tense scene, a standoff with Yorna and Obart. She tells him 2 demands. And she says demands. She's not playing here. She her tone of voice changes from like the really sweet way she talks to Louie and Subaru, and she turns to him and she's like, I have 2 demands. No questions, you answer them. Return Tanza to me now. Stop playing games with these kids. Like, her demeanor completely changed. She's very angry. And Obart tries to deflect, and Yorna immediately shuts him down and attacks him. She does a huge heel kick, kablam kablooey, and the castle basically splits in half.
Yeah, doesn't she knock over one of the towers?
Yeah,
like,
she knocks over
entirely
one of the
with the
towers.
kick.
And does a heel kick, and like the castle almost like
Splits in half.
splits in half. Yeah, it's insane. That doesn't kill Obart though. And then this is where we get to. I'm not going to directly summarize this because there's too much that happens in this fight. But we get into possibly one of my favorite fights in the series so
Well,
far.
before we get into that fight real quick, you two, let me ask you a question. Because the people of the demon city of Chaos Flame are strong, but are they stronger than the people of the Shinobi village?
Oh, yeah. I think they are. I just think they are.
That fucking line got memed
my
into
God.
existence so
Yeah.
much when these chapters were coming out. It was like every other comment was asking that question.
That's funny.
It's
That is very funny.
Mhm.
But yeah, we get to a point where they're fighting, and it's insane. And like, if this ever gets animated, this is gonna be an awesome spectacle.
Oh, 100%. This concept of fight is probably one of his best, honestly.
Yeah, because we get these 2 simultaneous powers of Obart being extremely nimble, having a lot of technique and preciseness, and Yorna is like pure, not just magical, but physical strength and brawn. She like smashes, destroys, and then starts to use her soul marriage technique on her castle and starts shooting the roof tiles of this castle like bullets towards Obart.
And stepping on them. Like, using as platforms to step on and stuff like that. That visually is just so striking. And also the image that they have in the light novel.
In the light
looks
novel,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we get this impression of like Obart mentions well, it's not Obart mentions, but we get this impression that the only reason that Obart is not dead already, and that, you know, like conventional military force cannot take this place, is because Obart is in like a strength league of his own. We see some like insane feats from Obart in this fight. Like, he breaks through a load of Yorna's techniques just by using hidden Shinobi techniques and by dodging things and using them as platforms. It's insane. It gets to the point where Subaru says, I cannot watch what they're doing with the natural, like, way you perceive things with the human eye. That is how fast they are fighting. And we get a really cool kind of narration moment where this was a reference I wasn't expecting, by the way. It compares Obart's fighting to Muhammad Ali's boxing. Like,
oh yeah, where he just
sting
moving
like a butterfly,
fast and
float
your
like a
eyes
bee.
can check.
Yeah. And then Subaru's like, this guy is combining the power of a sniper rifle with the flight of a fighter jet. And that was just the perfect, I think, description of how insane Obart is in this fight. And then we get into the most important part of this phase. And one of the most important parts of the arc so far. The fight is going back and forth for a while. And then Subaru says the line. What's the line you said, Connor? Not Subaru, Obart says the line that you just said earlier.
Oh, that the people of the demon city of Chaos Flame are strong, but are they more powerful than those of the Shinobi tribe?
And then he throws these little balls of rations that he mentioned earlier, tasted terrible and were part of his training. They're filled with fire magic stones, and they blow up in the sky as he throws these bombs out.
How's that for rock candy?
That was good. And the sky has this huge shockwave and explosion, and Subaru isn't able to close his eyes in time. and his vision turns red and he gets a load of pain. And using that distraction, Obart snaps behind Yorna and goes to kill her. And Subaru thinks, this is my moment, I have to intervene. I have to do something. He has the system with Louie where he'll point to where he wants her to teleport with her ability. They teleport together. And Louie takes the hit for Yorna because Obart moved too quickly. Louie dies in front of Subaru and he's covered in blood. Subaru then realizes, because the shock wasn't expressing the pain to him, he isn't just got his vision dyed with red. One of his eyes is soaked in blood and the other is hanging out of his eye socket from the force of the explosion. And he starts to comprehend the pain and Louie's death at the same time. And he starts to panic and drop to his knees. And we see a new side to Yorna. She starts to panic and worry and sees these children dying in front of her. And Yorna kisses Subaru and begs him, please, love me. I can heal your wounds with my technique if you just love me. And that would be the solution to this. But Subaru, he can't say it because there's someone else he loves.
It couldn't be me.
No, I do not have that willpower.
No.
Like, fucking kiss me, Yorna. I will love you immediately.
Yeah.
Let's kick this ninja's ass together.
But, yes, Subaru says no, and he dies. And then this is where we get to the really interesting part. We go to the Shadow Garden for a bit at the end of this chapter. It's written how the Shadow Garden is normally written in a novel. It's very mysterious, just like emotions and thoughts like blurring out in this void of darkness. And then we get a moment with Satella and the Witch of Envy. And she asks, Where are you? Satella, the Witch of Envy, can't track where Subaru is.
Yeah, she's lost him.
She's lost Subaru. And we then come back to a checkpoint, which is this question that Obart asks as he throws these explosives. Subaru is in shock from just being beheaded, and the pain of his eyeballs being destroyed, and he no longer has the shock or the adrenaline keeping him from understanding it. He drops to his knees and cries. There's an illustration for this from the light novel, by the way, and it is terrifying. It's Subaru holding his hands over his face, and his eyes are like bleeding. It's oh my god, it's terrible.
Yeah, because the shockwave is going to destroy his eyes again immediately if he doesn't react to it.
He doesn't react. He's in a 10-second loop.
10
Not
seconds.
Only does he have a 10-second loop, there's something that Subaru realizes as these loops are happening. This is not return by death. This is not the authority.
Well, he says knows. This was not Subaru's return by death.
This is not Natsuki Subaru's return by death, not the one he knows. This is a 10-second loop. It's Ao's authority, right? Like, that's my speculation here. Subaru is somehow using Ao's authority. Because Ao can't use his right now. And Subaru is activating it the way Ao would activate it in a fight.
I feel that, yeah. It's interesting that you say that, and that is the logical conclusion. I don't even know if that's the case. It is the thing. I wonder, because the malfunctioning here, maybe Al in a different timeline is dying a few times and using Subarus, but I don't know what would be it makes no sense for this to swap. You know what I mean? It literally, I couldn't imagine why it would swap.
Well, we know that Subaru had standard return by death, or not standard. It still wasn't working right because it only did like a 2-minute thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The last time it did.
That's what I mean. I think this is just I think this is like a malfunction of something.
But this is my running theory, right? Because we've said before, right? Owl's authority trumps return by death in the sense of Subaru can loop around that, but Owl's authority allows him to do these very small loops that not even Subaru, when he's doing his stuff, Subaru's not gonna notice. But Owl comes to a realization earlier, not just from pain, but his authority doesn't activate the way he knows. Do you think their authorities have accidentally switched?
That was a very popular theory at the time. It was the prevailing theory was that somehow Subaru was using Owl's authority.
Yeah.
And the reason, there's a lot of reasons to think that, but I'm apprehensive to that because the mechanics of what occurred just beforehand, before the last time, there hasn't been a single tentpole odd moment where I'm like, that's where it happened. Unless it has to do with Obart's technique, and I don't get why that would be the case. Or somebody is secretly manipulating this. And I don't know who it would be, but...
My theory at that point was that Owl's authority was on. So, we were in a point where it was only going to loop back however far back he goes. But Subaru's return by death wasn't able to go out of it. So, it was on and active and around. Owl just hadn't died and reset it. Or whatever he does to properly reset for that. And Subaru wasn't able to return by death beyond the range of Owl's authority.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like mixed radio frequencies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it also it begs the question too, because if there's somebody, here's my thought. If there's somebody the Witch of Envy controlling this authority for Subaru and the checkpoint and stuff like that, and she doesn't know what's going on with it. The idea is that if it's malfunction for Al 2, did he have somebody who dictated whether or not the authority activated? I don't know who would it be, but I mean, that's my thought.
Mayhaps.
My other theory for this is that because we learn later that the way Obart did this technique was he literally manipulates their ode. I was curious if whatever he manipulated the ode with, especially for Owl, somehow made it so his witch factor decided it needed to find a new host, and it attached itself to Subaru.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the regression might have to do with it as well. It's sort of like a EMP almost, it's scrambling a bit of the
and when
the
it finds
soul
a
information.
host more worthy, it attaches to Subaru instead. That's my running theory at the moment.
Yeah,
I have a feeling if the regression reverses, it may attach itself back to Owl.
Yeah, I wonder if authorities have such a consciousness. I don't know. They might, but it depends.
Authorities don't, but at least to my understanding, I think the witch factors might not have a consciousness, but how would you best describe it? An intent, maybe? Especially with what we see when Subaru has that moment in Arc 6 where he sees Regulus and Petalgeese speaking in his head as the witch factors that are in him. It's just a thing I speculate.
Yeah. Maybe it has something to do with fate or something. It's weird. Maybe again. I'm getting a feeling of a scramble happening, information's not being read correctly, reboot your PC sort of situation.
Yeah. Blue screen. But yeah,
unfortunately, I know the answer, so I can't contribute to this
conversation.
I
know.
So regardless of what the answer for this actually is, the fact that this is even a thing is very interesting, because the context of this is Subaru died an uncountable amount of times. And we learn how horrifying Obart is. We have multiple times where he sees Subaru crying and screaming and will kill him quicker with a shuriken because he doesn't like the cries of children. This is the kind of man Obart is. Obart literally, there's a point where Subaru and Louie escape because he's like, okay, I need to let Yorna fight this guy by himself and not be a burden. and they teleport away. And Obart breaks through the roof of the castle and kills them. Obart is so relentlessly scary, like terrifying as a person. Like the amount of fear Subaru feels towards this man is very understandable, because I'm not gonna lie, he's very scary.
There's also just no way out of this situation.
Yeah, it
There's
feels like
no
there's no
clever
right
trick.
answer.
There's no alternate route. There's no right words to say. He's just fucked.
And
For thousands of times, I'm guessing.
We get to a point, and this is really sad, where his heart starts to shatter, as it eventually would. And Louie keeps, in every single one of these loops, Louie keeps pulling on his arm, trying to get him to move and help him survive. And Subaru's just more and more, this isn't return by death. This isn't what I understand to be return by death. What am I supposed to do? You know, return by death, how I considered it before, is a mercy compared to what this is. It's a loveless act. So much so that it seems there's love in Natsuki Subaru's return by death. He gets to a point where he starts hugging Louie in these loops because he's died so many times and so much time has passed, he's starting to miss the warmth of another person. He feels all paths lead to death. Everything he does, he dies, and he never gets past 11 seconds. Never. Not once.
He never reaches 11 seconds.
Never reaches 11 seconds, thank you. Never past 10 seconds.
Or I guess, yeah.
And there is a point where he starts to feel like he's giving up, and he thinks, what if me and Louie flee completely and we leave behind Yorna to die? And then he gets a moment of self-reflection of, I don't want that. I don't want Yorna to die. She's fighting for me right now. And then he has a feeling inside of him of, you know, I'm not adequate enough to deal with this situation, but there's people I love in this world that are very adequate and could do something in this situation. What would they do, is the question he asks himself. He tells himself, I won't give in, I won't let this break me. What would the others do? The ones I love. Everyone from the Emilia camp, all the people that have trained him, Julius, Anastasia, Aridna, all the people that he's come close to in his journey. What would they do? And they start talking in his head. Like the images of the people that he loves, that he sees, start talking to him in his head and tell him, what should I do? I can't turn back now. What do I do in this situation? How do I help? You know, a lot of you have access to amazing magic that I don't, so I can't, that's not a thing I can imitate right now. What can I do? And he thinks, you know, in all of these loops, these countless loops, all I've been doing is trying to survive or trying to save. But how do I go beyond this despair of these 10 seconds? How do I get to this 11th second? I have to go beyond what I think is possible. And so he tells Louie to teleport him. And he's teleported on top of Obart before after the explosion, and he grabs him and he tells him, I won. Just as Obart is about to kill him, he screams, it's my win. And he tells Obart, I beat not only you, I beat Yorna. I won, and I won. And he starts crying, and he can't stop saying it. And the reason why this ends up working is because Obart's condition for this game, initially, was that, you know, oh, you just catch me, but because that would be too difficult for you, you just have to find me 3 times. So Subaru is trying to brute force it and use this as what he thinks is the only way to stop Obart from killing him forever. And it works.
The game of tag had never officially been called off.
It never had officially been called off, and Obart's weird, twisted logic and recognition not only is amused by this turn of events and stops and seizes hostilities, he's I would say fascinated by Subaru. Like, he has this thing of like, whoa, interesting. You've caught my eye. Like, you're on my radar.
It like piques his interest about it.
We get a really, really sweet moment after this where Subaru, he turns to Louie and he thanks her. And he thanks her with all his heart for all of the times she died for him in the loops that she doesn't know of, and all the times that she's protected him and helped him. And Louie starts to cry in response to hearing that. And we get this really sweet moment where they're all crying and Yorna grabs them and takes care of them and says, you know, it's my job as the adult here to hold you and let you cry as much as you need. So then we get this moment of introspection, like hostilities cease. Subaru is like, I don't want to get Yorna or Chaos Flame involved in this war. Like, this is too lovely a place. I need to stop this from happening. And we then switch to Abel and Co. In a rather interesting scene where we learn that Tanza was hidden in the tavern where Chisha, or Vincent, Kathma, and Obart were staying. And Abel has arrived there and is squaring off with Vincent. And
I completely forgot about this scene entirely.
Yeah, they square it down, and Abel tells Tanza she is beautiful because of her dedication to Yorna and how far she is willing to go to stop Yorna getting involved in the war. And Abel does not deride her at all for the action she took. In fact, he's very impressed. He then Abel starts to deduce that Obart is probably at the castle, just like Subaru did. And also he starts to talk to the rest of the party as they're leaving with Tanza to go back to Yorna. About how he doesn't mind if Owl or Medium lose the childlike technique, but he wants Subaru to maintain it. He says, I think Owl is unsuitable as he's missing an arm, and Medium's eye and hair color is wrong. And
Figures to be meaning aesthetically, much as like
not like wrong as in like bad.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
He then dramatically, in like an old samurai movie almost, holds his hand out and calls out to Subaru while looking at the castle, telling him to accompany him by the unopposable wind into the midst of war.
Nice ominous posting.
Yeah. And then we get this moment again where Obart once again asks Subaru, are you part of the Imperial family? This is kind of interesting. And then Subaru starts to get flustered when he looks at Yorna again, and he realizes in these countless amount of loops, Yorna has kissed him like hundreds upon thousands of times. And he gets really embarrassed about it.
Eat your heart out, Amelia.
And I'm just like, you can keep your heart, Amelia, but Yorna's kind of cool. Just saying. And then he feels guilty because he worries that when he gets de-regressed by Obart, which Obart is offering to do, Yorna's going to be annoyed at him and realize that he wasn't telling the full truth, and he doesn't want that because he wants to be friends with her.
I'm sure she would forgive him, honestly.
Yes, even though I'm sure in my heart that I know she would forgive him. And Subaru's like, again, my adult self maybe doesn't have the right answer now. I need to protect Louie from my adult self, the adult self that condemned her and would disregard her. And then Subaru actually asks Yorna to not be too tough on Tanza after all of this happened. And Yorna is just like, oh my god, kid, yes, of course. And Obart's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to try and fix you now. I've just got to restore your ode to the proper form. We're going to fix you. And then we get one of the most chilling scenes in the series, like, ever. As soon as Subaru touches upon his ode and goes to fix it, we hear the words, found you. As Subaru is about to wonder, what is happening with Return by Death? shadows start exploding out around Subaru, and Obart's arm is immediately consumed. The city is getting thrown in disarray, and we switch back to Abel as he's walking towards the castle, and he asks himself, is this the true identity of the thing you'd been carrying within? Satella has brought ruin upon Chaos Flame. And that is how we end this phase!
Sure is! Oh my god.
Yeah.
I had been sitting on knowing that was going to happen since we started this arc. All of arc 7. It's like, it's such a huge return back to form of, oh right, let's not forget how Subaru got here in the first place. It was because of Satella and Volcanica blasting him away in a mix of light and shadows, and then here she is just blasting him with
She's
shadows
still
again.
pursuing him.
Mhm.
Yeah. Of all this time.
Last time he got out of her grasp, she possessed Amelia and destroyed everyone in the sanctuary.
Yeah, exactly. This, my idea is whatever scrambled it, right? Obviously the odd. I think it makes sense, right? He starts to repair Dunkel, and then it fixes the transmission error, right? Is my theory, right? And the idea is that she's jealous because Subaru gave so much love to everybody else in his life. You know, his appreciation for others had reached such a boiling point after so many resets that it kind of created a perfect through point for her to infiltrate from. You know, I think it requires a lot of energy and also a lot of uses of the ability for her to kind of build up inside Subaru enough to which she's able to pierce through.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how much miasma was coming off of Subaru at the end of that.
Because she's using her magic
thousands of times. Yes.
Yeah. She's using all the shadow magic to do this countless times, thousands of times, right?
Well, I mean, the shadows are the shadow magic, but the return by death is just the authority of the envy witch factor. I think that's separate things.
Yes, it's separate things, but you know, I wonder about it sometimes, but yeah, you're right. It probably is just her independently doing this, right? And yeah, I wonder if it requires a homing, right? Like, you have to connect enough or coalesce enough magic in one spot for her to burst through. I think it's always in weird situations like this in which she's nervous or scared of Subaru breaking free from her grasp that she manifests. We see it in the Tea Party when he's about to make a contract with Echidna, you know, all this different stuff. There's specific times she manifests, and it's when she's afraid that she's about to lose her control over him.
Yeah. It also feels to me a bit like it's not even just almost like Subaru, Subaru left and dodged this vision on me. It's almost like the way she intones it almost feels like you were taken from me. Someone took you.
Yep, the gel switch.
And she comes in, and now she's here to make sure you're never going to leave my sight again. Which I think means not only is... if the context of this next chapter, not only is I feel like this close utopia of Chaos Flame is probably going to be damaged beyond repair because of these events. It's going to be a huge tragedy. But I also feel that Subaru may be in some danger and constantly in possession of this witch. I feel like Subaru's gonna have to be rescued by other members of the party.
True, and it's also gonna give people, if he survives this, everyone's going to know that he has the envy witch factor.
Yeah, I mean, Abel's even saying yo, is this what you've been carrying with you this whole time?
The Witch of Envy, right? And finally, if somebody links Subaru exactly to the Witch of Envy, the entire nature of the story changes. Everyone now knows what Subaru has potentiality inside of him, right? Mm-hmm. And that changes because everyone sees him as unassuming, someone with only good timing, right? if that part of his guise is gone, and now he only has to rely on him as himself and people knowing, being influenced, used by this ability, that's the entire thing as well. The idea that they could vanquish or like seal the Witch of Envy is dubious, but or like shoo her away or whatever.
I'm still not positive she didn't seal herself away, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you might need to beat her up a little bit, right?
Yeah,
like
press her off.
Yeah, pressure off, right? I think my analysis is that I think Yorna is the perfect person to do this, because it's love versus love. It's very ironic. I mean, it's not ironic. It's purposeful that Yorna's entire thing is about love, and everything that Satella, the Witch of Envy, says is about love, right? Love me, right? And that sort of dichotomy here makes them perfect, because really, who actually gets strengthened off of love? It's Yorna,
of Chaos
right?
Flame.
Yeah.
Oh, so like a running theory of how Subaru even gets out of the situation is by the end, because I assume it's going to be a whole mini arc for the next phase. That's my assumption.
Yeah.
Is Yorna going to have to like get to Subaru and have this moment again of asking Subaru to love her, and Subaru has to accept it, not only to get out of the situation, but also because it starts a new bond with Yorna as a character for him.
Yeah, well, that too, and also I think it has to do with perhaps fending off the ideas that the Witch Enemy might see that she's not capable of influencing Yorna or anybody here because her love beats hers, right?
Yeah.
And that'd be, a crazy scene and whatever. But I do think that a part that was touched on in this phase is going to be touched on again, where I don't think Yorna is capable of protecting everything, right? Because, I remember Vincent was like, how much can she... That's so taxing, right? I think, like, the idea is that there's going to be a limit of what she can save. And Yorna is going to have a conflict where she's like, do I save my city? Do I save my people? Who do I save, right? Do I save this person who's being attacked unfair by this witch? Like, where does she put her odd into other people? Like, where does she share people with?
I do also think though, especially
sorry, I was gonna say she has to choose, just like Subaru has to choose throughout this arc. I think that's gonna be like a thing as well, where Subaru has been having to choose who he finds is worthy of being saved, and Yorna is gonna have to be more discriminate. She's gonna have to pick what she saves.
Yeah, I think it may end up being Subaru as like, because I think her main focus is children, right? As she said, like, I think in general should focus on protecting the children of the city. And I also, it makes me curious in the sense of, I think Yorna may be the motherly figure to Subaru, because I have a feeling he's going to be regressed for a while if Abel's kind of like plan goes along with that. So I wonder if Yorna is going to play like a sort of motherly role to Subaru and help him come into his own and like help blossom him into his true potential. I wonder if she's going to be one of the people that forges him into that. I can very much see it.
Who knows?
Yeah, we're gonna have to find out next time, huh?
I guess this is a good place to stop. Thank you everyone who watched to this far and has been watching these analyses of the phases of Arc 7 so far. These have been so fun to make. We'll probably be taking a break from Arc 7 for the next couple episodes, just because I think this is a good cliffhanger to kind of do a bit more variety before we get back to Phase 5. But I hope everyone watching has a wonderful day or evening wherever they are. And goodbye!
Bye!
Bye!